Greetings, one and all, or good afternoon, or good evening, or grand rising, depending on where in the world you're watching us from. Hello, my name is Naa Amerley Asante-Armar. I am your host for today's Real Talk, Reshaping Motherhood, coming to you live from Ghana and the UK, and from a various number of platforms. So welcome to us if you are joining us on Speak Up and Empower Africa, on Power to Our Mothers Foundation Africa, on GPAN Queens Club, or on my personal YouTube page, Naa Amerley. For President, you are welcome. Today is Monday, the 8th of February, and it is this week's episode of Real Talk, Reshaping Motherhood, where we basically challenge our views, our perspectives on motherhood in a bid to enable all women to embrace their maternal qualities and strengths to improve their own lives and the lives of those around them. If you are joining us for the first time today, a special welcome to you. A little bit about us. So Power to Our Mothers Foundation Africa is a non-profit organization registered in Ghana with presences in Zambia, Nigeria, and Kenya, and still growing. And the aim is to empower mothers and mother figures, aka women and girls, on multiple levels. And we're doing this in collaboration with one of our partners, that is Speak Up and Empower, a Canadian-based, online, membership-based and heart-centered community focused on building businesses, communities, and relationships and lives that allow us to create and share our dreams. So, once again, welcome, welcome, welcome. Wherever you are joining us from, as in not location, but whatever platform you are joining us from, kindly take a few seconds to like, share, subscribe, follow, just as a bid to support these various platforms and to share the messages that we are speaking this evening. I would really much appreciate that. So today, I was looking forward to this episode. I am joined by a wonderful lady who I call a sister, the lovely Laura Pusey. And Sister Laura, as I refer to her fondly, has many hats. She's a mother, a proud mother of two teens. She is an end-of-life guide, also known as a death doula. If you didn't hear that before, you heard it here. She's a funeral celebrant and founder of D.I.P.ism, or D.I.P.ism, which we'll get her to explain about, but is an end-of-life guidance service that accompanies an individual and their loved ones through the experience of dying, death, and bereavement. And this includes providing social, spiritual, emotional, or practical support, giving a compassionate ear to people who are dying, as well as helping people with funeral plans and performing funeral services. She's also a qualified hypnotherapist and Reiki Master, providing bespoke therapy for her clients. So please do give her a warm virtual welcome. Welcome, Sister Laura.
Thank you for having me. Definitely. Thank you, Naa Amerley. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Oh, sorry. Got an alarm going off. Thank you. Yes, I'm in the right place at the right time. Thank you.
Exactly. That was to remind everybody else to pay attention. Because today we're talking about something very interesting. Those who know that I speak, at least from the perspective of Power to Our Mothers Foundation Africa, and to a certain extent GPAN Queens as well, you know, we really embrace the idea, the presence of the mother or the mother figure, which we view to be all women and girls, as in potential mothers. However, there can be difficulties, there can be tensions, there can be strains. And so today what we're looking at is, you know, a personal account and general look at, you know, the relationship between a mother and daughter and how that can impact us in life. But before we do that, I just wanted to give you, Sister Laura, just a brief moment just to say a little bit more about D.I.P.ism, you know, why you got into this, helping, guiding people through this stage of life.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I have always, I know it's going to sound a bit morbid, but I've always had an interest in dying, death, and bereavement. Since from when I was quite young, the first funeral that I went to, it was a family member in the coffin, and my dad had picked me up so that I could see the person who had passed, and literally held me aloft lengthways and was chastised for it. That was the first time I'd seen a dead person, and it was a case of, well, where are they gone? My mum was a nurse, and she used to work on wards with patients who were suffering from cancer. And when she would come home in the morning, I'd say, "Did anybody die last night?" And she would explain yes or no and the procedure and everything. And it was just something that just always got my attention. Dying just seemed so weird. And then it was the responses to dying as well. And it seemed that it was something that was rather hushed up. It wasn't public. It felt like a celebration from an African Caribbean perspective. But I noticed that people from other races weren't really embracing it the way that we do. So it was something that interested me. Now, I was attending funerals that were being conducted by people who were not of my community or my hue. And I found that it was quite upsetting, really, to be at the funerals of loved ones and having those services presided over by people who didn't know them. So I decided that something would have to be done. I knew that I could do this, but I didn't know how. My aunt passed away in 2015. I had
Oh, sorry to hear that.
It's okay. She is the inspiration for the work that I'm doing now. I had the pleasure and the honor, I would say, of being able to sit with her at Guy's Hospital in London. I spent the night with her, and it was such a transfer of energy. It was such a touching experience that highlighted so many things to me, such as a lack of personal care when somebody is actually making that transition. My aunt, being in the hospital, was surrounded by nurses that just had other patients to see. Nobody really looked in and spent time with her. And there were occasions where I thought to myself, if I wasn't here, what would have happened? Following her passing, I was able to work with my family to arrange the funeral. And I realized at that time that my uncle and my cousins were not really connected to the community with regards to who's doing what, and, where we can work with people with regards to the traditions and the rituals that are normally carried out. There was no nine
Hmm.
night, for example. And so my intention from then on was to become a doula. Now, I had never heard of a death doula. I'd heard of a birth doula, which is seen as a midwife, normally, traditionally, somebody in the community who would help to bring a baby into the world. I thought, if that's the case, then there must be somebody on the other side who can help to, take us out of the world, if that's, the opposite side of things. And I realized that that must be me. It turned out that there were people who were doing this death doula service, but in truth, this is something that we have done since millennia. It's always been a
Hmm.
community thing, and this is something that is deeply rooted within our traditions, and it's time to bring it back. So
Thank you.
I qualified as a doula and a funeral celebrant. I can work with a family and go throughout the whole experience. As a bereavement counsellor as well, I can just provide a holistic service.
Fantastic. And unfortunately, very timely, I guess, given what's going on in the world today.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you emphasize it does make a difference. You know, the fact that yes, we are all human, but there are things that are very personal to us that only certain people can understand. Sometimes it will be a race issue. Sometimes it's a gender issue. Sometimes it's an experience issue, as in people who have gone through at the same traumatic event. So I think
Yeah.
it is important that we do have those bespoke things, for us. So that's amazing. That's amazing. So now, my dear, today, yeah, we really want to look at this mother-daughter relationship today. And I don't know about you. I mean, I have friends. I'm very close to my mother. We have had our ups and downs. I have friends that are alike. But it's good to and important to look at the other side, especially because we're female. When you have the relationships that are the same gender. So, can I just ask you to start with, what was your relationship with your late mother like?
Do you know how I would answer that? I'd say that there was a time when she loved me. There was a time when she loved me. And, it started off, I have such fond and warm memories of myself and her together. And just that sharing of love. I can't say that I know definitively what it was that changed that, but I do know that there was a time when there was warm and unconditional love between the two of us. My mother was a Jehovah's Witness, and I followed the birth of a son that her and my father had who passed away. And so I was very much wanted. But I would say that a bigger wedge was drawn between us when I decided to turn away from the religion that I was raised in. My father was not a witness. His religion was smoking and drinking and being out and about. But
Yeah.
myself and my sisters and my mum were regular attendees and rather much entrenched in the religion. And so when I turned my back on the religion, I lost my family and my friends as a result. There
Oh,
is a
wow.
process called disassociation. And so whereas most people would just fall away, as people do, fall away from the religion, I actually didn't want to be a hypocrite. So I wrote the letter and disassociated myself. And as a result, um, my my mother and my sisters, following the instructions of the religion, I believe, decided to disassociate from me, let's say.
Oh, wow. So when you say
Mm.
disassociate, the word I hear is almost like divorce. So they basically just broke away from you.
Yes, yes, yeah. So they had a relationship with my children, but not with me. When it comes
How
to
did
my
that happen?
children, well, um, I allowed them to still speak on the phone. At the time, I lived in
Okay.
London and my mother lived in Yorkshire, so I did allow them to come up and visit and spend time with their grandma. I didn't have any grandmothers, and
Oh,
even
wow.
though yes, my aunt passed away, so my aunt was my mother's sister, but I didn't grow up with her. Um, I had four aunties in total. I didn't know them or their children really. On both sides of my parents, both my mother and my father had 12 aunts and uncles each. Because of the religion that I was raised in, I didn't know any of them. I wasn't allowed to have a relationship with any of them. And even though my dad lived in the house with us, I really didn't have much of a relationship other than being scared of him. So it was quite a restrictive environment.
Yeah, and one of our viewers has said it sounds quite controlling. I think that's an understatement from what you're saying.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that you had all these elder female relatives with whom you had no relationship because you took a decision. No connection.
No.
Yeah, that's a better word.
No. Okay, so my mother was the Jehovah's Witness, but she was the only one in the whole family.
Okay.
And as a result of that, she kept me and my sisters basically tightly entrenched in the religion. My family, on both sides, not being in the religion, were not able to gain access to me. I was led to believe that they were all wicked and evil, horrible people. But it's only once I got older and I went and sought them out that I realised that I'd been duped, I'd been lied to, I'd been controlled, I'd been manipulated. And so I'm still, building those relationships, but yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. I was going to, the question I was going to ask was, I imagine it was not, and you can tell me, I was going to say, I imagine it was not an easy decision to make, to write that letter to disassociate yourself. So you then either subsequently or whatever that was, how did that make you feel to now realize that you basically have been as much as you disassociated yourself, but to know that you have all these relatives, but to have no connection with them?
It took a while before I actually reached out to them. What happened was, I would say that due to, I'm just trying to find the right words. Birthrights were stolen from me. We'll put it that way. Birthrights were stolen from me. And in a bid to find out the truth, I went looking for my family on my dad's side to find out what had happened to certain areas of land in Jamaica. Now, because of the last time I had been in the same company as my family, I was rather apprehensive as to how I'd be received. And when I turned up at their home, they welcomed me with open arms and nothing but love.
That's beautiful.
And yeah, it was at that time I thought, hold on, there's something wrong here. Because this is not in line with what I've been told about who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whereas I was used to Christianity being presented in a very bitter and controlling way, I walked in on family who were Christians and I was shown nothing but love and acceptance.
Wow. So how long, or how did you acclimatize to that? Because like you just said, you were like, hold on a minute, this doesn't fit, the description you were given or the impression you were given.
Do you know, in truth, it's not easy because that area of the family that I walked into, my dad's sisters, it's a family that is very close, very involved, very tight knit. They speak every day. They know what everybody else is doing. I'm used to being excluded. I'm used to being on my own. I'm used to being the outsider looking in. And so at times it's like a bit like, wow, okay, right, okay, you're interested, like, really? It's nice, and understanding, learning more truths about my dad's side of the family, grandparents, great grandparents. It just feels like a whole new world has opened up in front of me. But it's a
Yeah.
nice new world. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm.
And so, having had such a, I was going to say pronounced, but having had, that initial rejection and
Mm.
isolation, if I can call it that, in relation
Mm.
to your mother, and then I focus, I guess, on the female relatives, and
Mm.
the fact that one of your children is a daughter.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there has been an impact of that in how you, or on your relationship with your own daughter?
Yes, my relationship with my mother directly affected my relationship with my daughter. My mother also had a relationship with my daughter that I did not realize was actually toxic. So she was bad mouthing me in a bid to get my daughter to be more receptive to her, let's say, to both her and my son. So there was a lot of negativity there that I didn't actually fully understand until actually last year. Around August time, when I did some personal work on myself. And then I realized that I had to actually talk to my daughter because I knew that there was a lot of resentment and anger and upset that she was harboring with regards to me and actions that I had made, and not understanding the full picture. When I was
Wow.
younger, yeah, when I was, when I had my daughter, well, what happened was, my parents had split up and my father passed away quite young when my daughter was 4 and I had a newborn. I had been beaten as a child by my father, and I thought that in order to raise your child, you would have to beat them in order to be respected.
Yeah.
When my father passed away, I didn't know what grief was. I didn't really understand fully, like, death, bereavement. And so I took a lot of my anger and my frustrations out on my 4-year-old. So moving on, she was scared of me. If I approached her to hug her, she would freeze. So there was a lot of work that I had to do around my actions and around what she had been told of me that wasn't true. And to have a conversation as adults, because she's now an adult, and to let her
Yes,
know that I love her, you know.
that is a lot. Is it possible to
Mm.
say, like, what was the moment that you realized that, um, yeah, what was the moment you realized that you had to do your own work to then kind of
Mm.
build the relationship you wanted with your daughter?
I would honestly say that that was a longer time coming.
Okay.
I had to do a lot of work around myself and my relationship with my mum, and realizing, I think the biggest thing that I realized about my mum was during a session that I did, which was called Family Constellations. And it was through that I realized that, first and foremost, my mum is a woman.
Mm.
Before she was my mum, she was a woman. And
Yes.
she did what she did. She did what she could with the tools that she had. And, you know, I had to recognize the position that she was in. She had been married and pregnant by the age of 18 and found herself in an abusive relationship before she met my father. So when she met my father, it was more of a survival thing for her, single mother with a child. It was more of a survival thing. Then they had my brother, Jonathan, who died, I think he was around 3 months old, of a hole in the heart. And so that also would have had an effect on her. Growing up the way she did, her mother had mental health issues. So that would have had an effect on her, you know? So when I realized, okay, this is a woman, she doesn't have the, you know, I was taught to believe that the elders had all the answers. They know everything. You have to respect them.
Right.
And then I realized, you were just doing what you thought was right with the tools that you had. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So I had to
That
learn
is such
that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to emphasize that that is such an important point. The fact that, well, first of all, like you said, before your mother was your mother, she probably was a wife, but before even that, she was a woman. She was an individual with her own
That's it.
character, her own
That's it.
baggage. Before she
Yes.
had, and I call it baggage, she would, of course, also, I would love to believe, she would have had her light, you know, whatever her vibrancy, her interest, her personality, you know, she would have had that. She would have had her
Yeah.
own baggage because,
Yeah.
as we know, we all come into this world carrying something because, like, even genetically or our DNA, and like you said,
Yes.
your mother, her mother had mental health issues. Who knows what the mother who had, so your grandmother, who knows what her mother had to deal with. So already you see the line coming
It's
down.
generation.
That ends up being very real for us, even though we may not know where it came from. So yeah, she was a woman. She was an individual, and I think it's for me, it is a reflection of the fact that yeah, you have done a lot of work to be in a state where you can say, well, do you know what? That's what she had to deal with. You know, it wasn't
That's
really
it.
about me. That was her.
Mm.
You know, so that's what I wanted to add. But please do go on.
Yeah, but it's true. It literally was a case of that's her, you know, and you know, because I had done that work prior to her passing, when she did pass away, I had already mourned her. I had already mourned her loss. And so I was the last person to hear when she ended up in hospital. And I went to visit her in the hospital, and she had said, oh, you know, I might be dying. Well, I didn't believe that she was dying, but I had said to her, well, even if you are, I actually said to her, I don't think you're dying. She looked too good. I was like, I don't think you're dying, but even if you are, can we be a family again? And
Oh,
she said, no, I talk to you if it's necessary. I will only ever talk to you if it's necessary. And that hurt. That hurt deeply. But you know, I had to respect her stance. Her religion came first, and she stood by that. And so the word necessary hit me. It was like a brand new thing. I'd never heard that word ever before. Who wrote where this word necessary come from? And that as well made me think, if a woman can look at her child and decide that I will only ever speak to you if it's necessary, I have to start asking myself, is it necessary for me to pick up the phone every time it rings? Is it necessary for me to have that slice of cake? Is it necessary for me to, I don't know, respond or do whatever I do? It just gave a whole new dimension to my life, the word necessary. And so I decided that it was not necessary for me to attend her funeral. And my children did go to the funeral, but they were glad that I didn't, because the poison that had been sown by her through my sisters was prevalent on that day. So a lot of the times I ask myself now, is this necessary? Is this a necessary conversation? Is this a necessary thing to do? Is that a necessary place to go? Mm. So I had mourned her. I had mourned her before she died. I had done the work, and then later I was able to then sit with my daughter and have honest conversations and apologize to her for the upbringing that she had. Because as a mother, we do what we think is right. And sometimes we don't realize that we're damaging our children. And they are sensitive little things at times. They may look as if they're strong and tough, but there's a lot going on in there and we don't always know about it.
Absolutely, because a lot of the time we have to ask ourselves how often are we aware, or how long does it take us to become aware of what is going on for us, let alone our children. And I so relate to what you're saying about the fact that you were able to do the work, the personal work, before your mother passed on. I had the opposite experience, where it was my father that passed, and I would say it took me 4 years before I was able to grieve for him.
Yes.
And a lot of it had to do with the fact that he wasn't there for the majority of my life. I did what's the word? Reconnect with him before he passed. But the difficulty in grieving had been the things that we hadn't been able to deal with when he was alive, like my child abuse, when he wasn't there. So the fact that you could do all that work, that processing and everything, so that when your mother did actually pass, you kind of already prepared yourself, I think is invaluable. Just hearing that, for you it must have been, but hearing that, I can just imagine, because it's almost like you set your own pace almost, as to how you're going to go through it, rather than just be on the receiving end of it happening, if that makes sense.
Yes. You can be active or you can be passive. You can not like what's happening and feel powerless to do anything about it. And you can go against the grain and become unpopular. I think those are available to us, and sometimes it's easier to just go against the grain, but that damages us inside. You know what you said about abuse, I now understand that I was emotionally abused by my mother when I was growing up. And I had a cousin who I spoke to, the only other person in the world who can actually put her hand up and say, she said to me, I know what you're talking about because your mum did it to me. And when I heard that, it was like, so I'm not lying. Because if anybody was, I didn't make it up. Because if anybody was to speak to my sisters or my mum's family, I'm the wicked one. I'm the horrible one. I'm the troublemaker, So when a cousin on my dad's side was able to say, yeah, I had to spend my weekends and holidays with your mum when I was 6 and she pitted me against your sister, things like that, I realized that my mum wasn't well. She wasn't well. and that was an abusive and toxic upbringing. And
Wow.
for me to, it's now that we're having this conversation, now I'm just like, actually, I did a big thing when I walked away from her religion. I did a big thing when I walked away from her. And wow, it's monumental. There are some times when you have to think about self-care, and self-care means that you have to take a step away from your parents, your family members, your siblings, maybe. We don't talk about that. That's not like culturally acceptable or correct, but abuse comes in many
Exactly.
forms.
Yes. I was
Abuse
talking
comes
about
in
that.
many
Just
forms.
sorry. No, I'm just like I'm echoing, I'm reaffirming, emphasizing what you're saying. I was having a conversation today, and it's along the lines of what you were saying. It's like your elders are your elders, and they require and demand, and they get respect. Period. That's it. There's no,
That's it.
there's no. But if it's like no, your elders are your elders, and you must give them respect,
Yeah.
irrespective of the fact that they may be completely disrespectful and abusive towards you.
Yes. Yeah.
This other, I don't know if it's necessarily cultural, as in I'm sure it's maybe a human thing, but this idea that blood is thicker than water,
Mm,
family is so important, and I wouldn't downplay family, but I have the same experience, and I know plenty of people who have found their own family, if you like, that have no blood
yes.
relationship to them
Yeah.
from across the waters, a friend here, so the fact that yes, we are tied by blood, fine, but it doesn't mean that the blood is harmonious. You can have enemies within your own bloodline. It happens,
Mm,
and we don't.
mm,
What
mm.
uh, I'm really emphasizing on what you're saying is that where is the space for that to be recognized, that okay, yes, this is your uncle or this is your cousin, and we know that you are actually there's enmity between you, and
Yeah.
where can we have the conversations or be given the tools as to how we manage situations like that? So I don't know about your family, but I'm sure this is not uncommon. How many times being at somewhere, and it's like you are obliged to go and either kiss, hug, cuddle this relative,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
see that, like the children, that they don't want to go, and it's such a definitely an
Yes.
African thing, maybe a African American, like a black thing, that it's like
Mm,
respect elders, go and hug your auntie, go and kiss this person, go,
yeah.
and they don't stop to
Mm.
ask, but is the child just being rude, or is there a reason? Because our spirit speaks, like we know.
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
is that is such an important question.
Mm,
That we need to speak about more.
mm,
How do we, I guess, as mothers even, make that space, make it okay for our
mm.
children to express when they're uncomfortable with somebody that is
Yeah.
family.
And moving forward from that as well is to believe them when they speak and
Oh,
not tell them you're lying. You must have got it wrong. Are you sure? No, it can't have been
mm,
like that. You know, because it's an elder, because it's a person in the family, because of the secondary gains that they might be getting from that member of the family, you know, that then is kind of, we've got so many unspoken rules, but gives them permission, maybe, let's say, to behave a certain way that's it's not on, you know.
we have to
We need
we
to,
have to have a whole conversation. We have to seriously. We have to have a
yeah,
whole conversation about that. A friend
yeah,
of mine, who is a pediatrician, and she's a suicide activist and prevention. you know, because she talks about how unfortunately the rates of suicide in our youth are increasing. I think more so in the States. But what she says is that where you take an individual and her specialism is youth, that is feeling suicidal or has actually been successful in committing suicide, the trigger for the emotions or for the event that led to them committing suicide is within a 100-yard radius of
Yeah.
where that individual is.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
just think, how long is 100 yards? So it means to tell you that some of our biggest traumas, they do come from those who are closest to us, or they are
Yeah.
triggered by, or we suffer that those closest to us. And so I don't know how, but like you said, we have this conversation that we must have this conversation where not only do we tell our children that they must tell the truth, but we reassure them to some, that what they say, we will listen openly
Yeah.
and we will believe them.
Yes. Yes. And we need to be having honest conversations. We do. I do need to, even. I'm sort of not saying it like, everybody else out there has to. But,
Yeah,
growing
we're
up
still on the
with
journey.
religion,
Motherhood is still
yeah,
now.
yeah, we
Yeah,
still have to do it too. And it's just come
yeah.
to my mind now as you're talking
Mhm.
that, within the religion that I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. And so I was taught to believe that if you stay within the organization, you'll be safe, Um, but, when I left, I was very naive. I didn't know what rape was. And, you've just sort of spoken about having those conversations and that. And yeah, the radius, sorry.
Mhm.
I always thought that it would be a tall, dark person down a dark alleyway with a dark, just, everything
Yeah,
dark, stranger. You never think it's going to be somebody that you know? And then
yeah.
I remember having a conversation with my mum because it's a situation that I found myself in. And a friend of mine said to me, talk to your mum. And I said, well, what's the point? There's no point in me talking to her. What is she going to say to me? And my friend said,
Oh,
tell her there's a chance. Just give her the chance to be able
the
to
benefit of the
comfort
doubt.
you and see something. And so I, said to her, this is what happened, and that, it resulted in a termination. And she said to me, well, what stupid position did you get yourself into for that to happen? And, I didn't have an answer. Many years later, I had a ton of different answers. But on that occasion, when she asked me what stupid position I'd gotten myself into for that to happen, I had no answer. Maybe
I'm
I should have
listening to
stayed
you
a
now.
Jehovah's Witness.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to
Sorry.
cut you.
Can you hear me?
No, I didn't mean
That's
to cut
okay.
you. When you said you didn't have the answer, you said that, and I'm conscious of my facial expressions being on here, but I literally, if my jaw could have hit could have gone through the ground,
Mm,
it probably would. That is the one of the
mm,
most confronting things. It's actually making me feel
mm,
quite emotional. The fact that you suffered a trauma already,
mm, mm,
and then somebody
mm,
who is supposed to be there to protect you, to nurture
mm,
you, to
mm.
comfort you, is blaming you for having suffered the trauma in the first place.
Yeah. But this is not unusual, unfortunately.
That's what makes it even worse. I know it's not.
That's it. Yeah. And so having these conversations when I talk to people, I'm going to say it as it is because it's quite easy to have the fluffy conversations, and yeah, there's a lot of fluff. But underneath that fluff is a lot of the stuff that people don't dare talk about. And we hide so much in thinking, it's okay, I'll get on with it, I'll be all right, everything's fine, da, 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 da. And it's not. And that's what causes illness. That's what causes disharmony within our bodies. And so I will speak as bluntly and as honestly, and I will answer any conversation if this is what it takes for people to realize that self-care means sometimes having to protect yourself against those that are closest to you.
That's a powerful way to put it. It's true. Because we're raised to think that those closest to us are exempt. They couldn't possibly hurt us.
Yeah.
When that is not our reality, unfortunately. So I completely commend, I embrace, I'll encourage, and provide platform where I can for us to have those conversations. Because linked to that, I've been speaking about female genital mutilation, but in the grand scheme of things, like I said, any of these, what you called as normal, that's a trauma on top of the trauma. The fact that not only do these atrocities still exist in our so-called sophisticated modern world, but it's the victim's fault that they exist. They didn't, she didn't most often, but they didn't, even children, right? Somehow they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. It could have been avoided. And that is not okay. That's far from okay. And I absolutely reaffirm what you said about enough of the fluff. We live in a world now, and we're talking about motherhood. So really, with the women, where we're not allowed to be so direct, open, and call out just how bad things are. A friend of mine just got banned from Facebook because she posted some images of, quite frankly, she posted some images of the vagina before and after some woman or a girl has undergone female genital mutilation. Is that graphic?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes, it is graphic. Is it, what was they say, sexual and there's nudity or something?
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, hold on, we can't see this. Yet millions of girls are going through this every year. But we can't see. We can't see. Not even are we going through. We're not even allowed to see what is happening.
Yeah. Which enables it to continue because it's just hushed up. And they might see it as, oh, well, it's only happening in Africa, so nobody needs to worry about it. It's murder. It's murder. We are all living in dysfunction, and it needs to all be brought to the table. All of it, And so, my response to that would be that everybody should post those images on their site and let Facebook block everybody.
Oh, there's a challenge.
That's a challenge. People will be offended because somebody complained about that site, that post. Somebody complained, but the person who complained did so because maybe they were coming from a place of pain. And seeing those images, for all we know, brought back some trauma. And it's not nice to see those images, but we have to see them because we need to learn and we need to bring awareness to the table, not only for our daughters, but also for our sons, and also for our elders. For our elders, they may be elders, but you never stop learning, you never stop growing.
Exactly.
And so they do need to be educated, and they do need to know what they've done and what in some occasions they have enabled to happen.
Absolutely. It is also said that in some cases, there actually isn't an awareness that what has been done is wrong because it's been handed
Mm,
down for so long. It's been adopted,
it's norm.
accepted as culture, tradition. And that
That's
particular practice of female genital mutilation, it didn't start in Africa. It didn't start in Asia. It started in Italy, in Rome. So how is it that now we are the ones at the brunt of suffering? Do you understand? So that is so
yeah.
important that yes, we do want to educate our children, both the female and both the girl and the boy.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is something to be said about showing the elders, not necessarily me. I
Mm,
don't operate from a blame perspective. It's just awareness,
mhm.
as in that you must take responsibility for this because there's
That's
cause and
it.
effect. Whether you believe
Yes.
it was right or wrong, the fact is it happened, and this is the result. So
Yeah.
now, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
So yes, I thank you
Mm.
for that. Yeah, we mustn't leave out the elders because
Mm.
it does go down the line. But the more we
And
can, go
mm,
ahead.
I was just going to say, the less we talk about it, the more we give it permission.
Yes,
So, yeah.
yes. It's like what do they call that thing? Tacit acceptance. You don't say nothing, so you just and there can be a belief that well because you haven't said anything,
Mm,
because you haven't actively spoken against it,
against.
it doesn't mean that you are condoning it. Yes, but it's the same as well. If you just sit, like you said, if you're passive about it, then it means that you're
Yeah,
not really bothered about it.
that's it.
And the
Yep.
thing about,
Yep.
like you said, I will share those. There's another way that she's actually done it, which is great with a warning and everything. But the thing about
Mm,
human beings is pleasure's great. It's wonderful when we have a vision, a dream, like a visual image of what it is that we want to do. But absolutely nothing motivates more effectively than pain.
yes.
Because unless
Yes.
unless for
That's
those people who enjoy, unless for people who enjoy pain, but for the I would say for the majority of us, you want pain to
mm,
end quickly, right? And you will do whatever
yeah.
it takes to make sure it ends. So therefore,
Yeah.
nothing will motivate you quicker or more effectively than
Mm,
pain. But sometimes you have
mm,
to see the downright harsh, cruel, graphic, painful truth before
yes.
you kind of wake up out of your stupor and say, oh,
Yeah.
actually, I must do something about this.
Yes. Yeah. It's true. It's a case of how much more will you take before you
Mhm.
wake?
Yeah.
How much more can we do to you? You know, you could flip it all on its head, and you could say that your abuser is giving you the opportunity to grow and to learn and to stand up for yourself, you know? So at what point
Mhm.
do you stand up and say it stops now? At which point do you call somebody's bluff and, if you do this, then I'm going to tell your parents, or I'm going to, whatever the threats. Okay, fine. Do your threat, carry it out.
Mhm.
Whatever it is that you say you're going to do it. But it's often, when our backs are against the wall.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we are complicit. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just saying that if any of us are in a situation that we know is wrong, then we do have the ability to put a stop to it. And if that means that we have to lose out, or it appeared to, if we
Mhm.
perceive ourselves as losing out, then just know that if you stand up, then you will get all plus in abundance down the road. But
Wow. The one thing I'd add
yeah.
to what you're saying is that I would go one step further. not only do we have the ability, it's our responsibility. It's our
It is.
responsibility. And to go even further, it's definitely our responsibility, especially as women, because
Mm,
whether or not we have physically given birth to children, we
mm.
are built to nurture. That is what we do. And
Yeah.
all every decision that we make, whether we know it or not, is actually focused on protecting our womb, the what do you call it, the storehouse, or the manufacturer of life. So whether you have children
Okay.
or not, it's here or there. But as a mother figure, it is our responsibility.
Yeah.
That's how we look
Even if
after
you
each
don't
other.
like the child. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Sister
Mm.
Laura, it has been so powerful, so enlightening speaking to you this evening.
Thank you.
And we must have more of these conversations. Yes, they may be the heavier conversation, the more deep and gloom. But like we are saying here today, they're
Mm,
exactly the conversations we need to have, because
mm.
the lighter things, yeah, they're nice, but so many of us are in pain, and
Yes.
pain is actually, I don't want to use best, but I'll say, yeah, the most effective driver. So we need to talk more about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to be on your platform, on your show, in your company, in your energy. I'm always happy when I'm speaking with you and am around you. And yeah, whenever you're ready to have these conversations, please do invite me, because I'm down for it. And I'm not into I don't know whether we're allowed to say it anymore. I don't know if it's an acceptable term, but I will call a spade every time, for the
Yeah,
growth of humanity. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Hmm.
it all has a place. We can't talk
Yeah.
about light and happiness and joy. We don't even know
Mm,
what that is unless we know what the pain and the darkness and everything is. So
that's it.
thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.
And thank you to our viewers for joining us this evening. Please do share the video or the broadcast with at least one person. You don't know who you can touch, who you can help move a little further along their healing journey, by just sharing a link. So thank you again this evening, and see you next week at 6 p.m. GMT for Reshaping Motherhood. Thanks, Sister Laura. Bye, everyone.